Well, it's time to start doing some ink work on this guy. On the last tape, which was a dedicated Brodak dope tape, there are now 3. There probably will be 4 total. Dedicated tapes. Shows all the painting of the trim, and that might be something that interests people. All the camo, all the roundels and everything. Anyway, on this tape we're going to try to get some ink work done. Give you some ideas, some tips. And I hope if you have some tips, you'll pass them on to me. Anyway, the ink is one of the defining features of the other 2 Spitfires. One or two of the features that I thought really came out well on the last 2 planes. And we're going to have to see if we can raise the bar a little bit. Now I start off, each time I want to do an ink job, I try to get some pictures of what are the defining features, and in this case I'll just point out some of the things that I'm going to try to replicate. If you look at how a real airplane, or in this case we're doing a semi-scale, but it wouldn't matter, even if this was a cardinal, we'd want to do something kind of similar where the line, we wouldn't just want to have lines randomly placed here. So kind of look, it looks like, and again I can't really tell, but I'm assuming that this whole piece comes off with Zeus fasteners so you can get at the engine. It looks like there's a double line along here where the fillet would be. Well, on our plane we don't have this piece, so we may have to fudge that. And it isn't important to get, like an example, this little line right in a position. What's important to get is the look. You don't have a bunch of junk just everywhere on it. But what really helps here is to have some books. Now in this case, we can get, now obviously we won't put all of these lines on, but just give us some of the things that may want to consider. You certainly could put the outline of the gear, the outline of the radiators on the bottom, and we will do the bottom first. 2 reasons. The bottom will be black ink, and it's a little easier to get in mode with black ink than with white ink. This is a defining line that goes right across the front, and I see how they have the rivets here. Now that's something I haven't done yet. Lines of rivets. The gun bullet outlets, see how they line up with the cannons and guns. Anyway, the little catches and overflows. It's always a good investment before you run off and start inking things. Take a real look at a real plane. Look at the ink on a tail here. There's obviously a spar of some kind right in here. And then each one of the, now this is something we can do, and what I'll do is I'll start on the bottom of the stab. I can replicate this line and then put in all my little lines almost prototypically here, which I've already done on the Seafire. Now see, on the Seafire, this was an exact, well not exact, but pretty similar to how I did that. This would simulate the spar, of course, and it was all white ink. Again, having the models here, and actually having 2 of them here, is really handy. For another reason is I can go, for instance, I can look up here and say, well gee whiz, which one do I like better? Do I like this is kind of a plain Jane one? Or do I like one that's got a lot more detailing? Looking at the model that you did just previous to this one, same way as the cockpit details. Anytime I can look at the cockpit details from models I've already built, what it does, it gives me ideas to work on the ones that I haven't done yet. And this is what I like about having a rack full of these planes just sitting over here. It just makes laying this out. Now see, in this case, this is a kind of, and I have 2 choices here. This is kind of a simple, very, very basic, simple ink job, and both of these planes were concourse winners, so I really don't have to worry like which is going to be the most popular version. This one really got busy in here. I did a lot of extra work. A lot of extra ink lining down on the side, and where it changes color going through the letters is nice. All these little hatches. A lot of detailing, but anyway, having these models, this is one big step, to me anyway, one big step toward getting the next one to be even better. Now you see, with no ink on it, the plane really does look pretty plain Jane-ish. Now you can get a good idea on a real plane. This is a museum replica of the plane. You can see some of the detailing, and some that you might want to make an exact replica of, and some you won't want to just keep it as close as possible. Again, the books are such a big help. Now, even if you were just doing a Cardinal or an SV-11 or something, just knowing how a real airplane is built, it's usually built with ribs and with skins, and the skins are riveted. So normally there would be panel lines going in direct line with the ribs to make it look realistic. You wouldn't have panel lines just going in. And the mistake a lot of people do, and I've done it myself in the past, is you buy one of these green templates with pianos and toilets and sinks and shrubs, and all of a sudden the plane starts to look very unreal. It makes it more unrealistic than realistic. So having a little idea of how a real plane actually goes together is, to me, I think, is a big help. Now you can see another thing we can see. There's very few letrosets. There's a few here, and these are so you don't walk, not to be walked on, and so you don't walk over where it's very thin, where the gear retracts. Just a few. But the mistake here would be to start putting panel lines and putting letrosets, hi mom, hi dad, you know, bum 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 bum, go Yankees or something. And before you know it, the plane starts to look like a billboard instead of an aeroplane. So this is a point at which I have to make a decision exactly how do I want this to evolve, and how much do I want to put into this. And if in doubt, the golden rule is, if in doubt, one less is better than one too many. Even these small representations, they have good aileron lines, how the gear fold back, things you may or may not want to use. I know Joe did a good job of replicating the aileron hinges on one of his planes, maybe on the new one, I didn't even notice. Lots of, but what I'm looking for, again, we're making a fantasy model here. We're not making an exact copy, and we really can't, because our wing is totally different in thickness and shape. But it does have a defining line, and this is the defining line. So the first thing I want to do when I get to the wing is get the defining line in position. I don't want to leave that out, because that really does tie the whole thing together. Now even here you can see the side line, how the cowl splits. You can see the defining line on a wing. A lot of the hatch work, and again around the canopy, lots of ink around the canopy. That's one of the things now, once I've gotten a picture in my mind, and again, a good idea is to start on the bottom. A good idea is to start with black ink and then work your way up to white ink. So by the time we get to the top, we'll be able to define it. Also, if you notice real carefully, on a real plane, the lines are all not the same thickness. The ones up by the nose are relatively thick because these come on and off with Zeus fasteners. The riveting lines are very thin and almost muted. So the other point that I wanted to make is I try to do all my ink lines in various thicknesses. The more different thicknesses, the better, because on a real plane I can see that this is a heavily defined line, and back here, well, there's almost no definition. It's just a piece of sheet metal that's riveted together. So having the option of doing a lot of different wing thicknesses on the wing, thicknesses on the body, around the canopy, different thicknesses of rivets. Having all those options, it really ties, to me, it ties it all together. Now in a picture like this, you can pretty much see how the nose comes apart. This piece of sheet metal comes off in one piece, and typically these are Zeus fasteners. So you would, if you were going to try to replicate this, of course our cowling is different and whatnot, but this would be a defining piece of sheet metal, and this could be in a relatively thick line. Now this really defines it well, shows exactly where the pieces split. You can see because it isn't painted yet, and obviously they're manufacturing them here, so there's a lot of information you could pick up off of a photo like that. And this is probably the best ones of all of these exploded views. Pretty much tells you what's on, where it is, and we can see where the rivet lines would be. And this is why, look real close. Here's the main bulkhead. Now we can't do this because our main bulkhead is in front of the wing, but on a real plane, this main bulkhead obviously ties into the main spar. Some pretty good engineering there, by the way. And so we will, when we get to do the wing, define this main spar and then try to do whatever detailing off of that main spar. Again,